me, baby. All you gotta do is call. You know how I feel about you. I can do anything at all. Let me help.
10:34 on this 31st day of May, wrapping up the month with Pyrotech Tim Sawyer. You know, I was going through, Tim. I have I hate to call it this. I got a business card deck from hell. I don't know where it came from. It just showed up at my desk one day. And I've never seen it before. Some of these cards are outdated, but one of them was a Pyrotech card, and I went, Pyrotech, I know that name. They're in a lot of the buildings that are around town, and I gave you guys a call to learn about some of these, this equipment you provide for all of us to keep us safe, and one of those things you don't need to have it until you kind of need to have it. Tim, you took over the company 6 years ago, huh?
Yeah, so myself and Terry Nolan, he's the co-owner of the business, purchased Pyrotech. Business has been around for a long time, been around for 25 years. Fantastic group of employees that have been providing these life safety services for decades at this point. And so we were really fortunate to inherit this really fantastic group of talent, people that are really, really passionate about keeping people safe and providing a service, kind of like what you said, that a lot of people don't think about it, but until I got into this business, I didn't realize how frequently our customers have, fires. It could be something as simple as somebody throwing a cigarette butt out on a mulch pile. Next thing you know, the whole, front yard's on fire of a commercial structure. Kitchen fires, we do a lot of fire suppression systems in commercial kitchens. That's a big part of our business, and it's just constant, fires in that kind of a space. So we're really proud of what we do. Our technicians take a lot of pride in the services that we provide, and we feel like we're one of the best service providers in that industry.
Well, I've seen so many of your guys' tags around. I would say that a lot of people feel the same way. And did you always have a background in fire suppression systems, or is this something new when you took over? So
my business partner and I really came from outside the industry, but we really were interested kind of for the things that we talked about a little bit offline. It's a really stable business, provides a great living for our employees, are able to do this for decades. And so we just really liked the characteristics of the industry, met the former owner, had a fairly long process to learn about the business, learn how we could effectively manage the business. And, we've been extremely fortunate. We were able to come in with really no outside experience, and not only have the business continue, but it's grown significantly. We've been able to bring in some really, I consider probably fairly basic technology, but things that aren't necessarily prevalent in our industry. So the industry for the longest time is, like we said, it would just be we tag a fire extinguisher and walk out the door.
Right. Now,
the fire marshals have higher expectations than that. They want a report that says, well, how many fire extinguishers do you have? Is it enough? Or have they been serviced properly? When are they going to be due for service next? Those types of things. So we've really tried to up our game and kind of meet our customer. As that customer expectations have increased, as technology has moved on, we've tried to meet that, so that's been really exciting for us.
Well, it has to be. And, we were talking off the air, guys, and I thought, right away, maybe there's some cool, new shaving cream that, stops the fire. Well, it's the damnedest thing. I played soccer for all my life, and my grandpa started it in town here, and I'm watching the World Cup, and I go, why does that referee have shaving cream, and why is he spraying it on their feet? And, it's like a marker. And I thought, well, how cool would that be for like some fire suppression stuff? But technology still creeping up there, but it's more on the accounting side with those tags, huh?
Yeah, it's really more, at this point, it's more on the reporting side. There are some things in some of the specialty fire extinguishers with new EPA regulations. So there's some very specific types of foam fire extinguishers, clean agent fire extinguishers, that there's some changes there. But as far as your kind of meat and potatoes, fire extinguishers, the technology really hasn't changed, but building owners and managers have much higher expectations these days. Right. It's not just throw a tag on and forget about it, because when that fire marshal walks in the door, they want to be able to show them a report, hey, I'm on top of it, I've had it serviced. And those are things that with just basic improvements in technology, we can provide that information in real time.
Well, and too, I'm just thinking of it because I guess I'm a nervous Nelly. I would go, did that guy actually mark that tag the right way? You know, because I mean, I'm sure they did, but you never know if somebody was having a bad day or sick and they forgot to, mark something and got some wrong info. But now with this, it really helps, huh?
Yeah, you just can't get by with just showing up and putting a tag on it and walking out the door. Part of it, the customer also wants to know what they're paying for. They want an accounting of what you actually did and how many units you service. So that's really exciting. We've embraced some new technology. A lot of companies have in our industry. So that's really what's exciting. But we're constantly training our technicians on. It's like anything, right? I mean, there's so many like things you just take for granted, and you don't really know all the minutia, that goes into it. And so, whether it's a fire extinguisher, a kitchen fire suppression system, an industrial fire suppression system, you can always learn more. We have guys that work for us for decades that are still learning every day. They're still coming in asking questions. They're still asking, for manufacturer training, those kinds of things. So. As much as some of these guys know, they also know there's always a higher bar that they can achieve. And so that's what we're blessed to have guys like that really pride themselves on being the best in the industry.
Without a doubt. And as you're, transitioning into taking over ownership, what were some of the learning curves, to kind of, get familiar with it, when you're first starting out?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to learn. Mostly on the fire suppression side, there's multiple manufacturers. So if you talk about a commercial kitchen hood, there's dozens of appliances that I didn't know existed. What's a salamander? What's a cheese melter? What's an upright broiler? Things like that.
I'll pass.
A lot of people, it's no big deal. And so there's a half dozen different manufacturers of fire suppression systems that can extinguish fires on those appliances. They have, they each have their own nozzles, their own nozzle placements, things like that are all important to properly suppressing that fire, and things that we need to be cognizant of when we're doing the installations and the service. So, it's just a lot of, just like my technicians, it's just being out in the field, learning, asking questions. We're fortunate, we're direct distributors for these manufacturers. So if we have questions, we just have to pick up the phone, and there's somebody that either designed the system or is trained heavily, from a corporate standpoint to answer any questions we have. So we're not guessing. There's always a right answer. And so we're fortunate to be able to pick up the phone and do that.
Well, and too, I mean, you guys have a plethora of services you provide. And one that I think, so I'm going to ask you to go through them if you could. But one I wanted to ask you about first was, especially kind of correlating to us, is this food truck suppression system, which, I mean, obviously now that I say it out loud, it makes total sense.
Sure.
But my brain doesn't work this fast in the morning. So I'm going, why would you need a fire? Oh, wait, because you're cooking with gas in a tiny truck. This is important.
For sure. And really, a food truck is just a mini commercial kitchen. It's got a hood, a fan, appliances, really outside of the fact that they're normally using, natural gas or propane using propane as opposed to natural gas. They're essentially no different than a restaurant. And a lot of the AHJs, the authority having jurisdictions, they look at them the same way. They need to have, fire suppression systems. They need to have fire extinguishers. And kind of to your point, probably even more so than a brick and mortar restaurant. Brick and mortar restaurant, you have multiple points of egress, you have space to get away from a fire. If you're in a food truck, there's really nowhere to go.
You better run.
So exactly. And they may only have one door, and it may not be the direction you want it to be in. So it's definitely important, just as important for food trucks. That's I don't know how many a lot would be, but we do maybe a dozen food trucks a year, and and it's a really, we pride ourselves on doing a really good job. They bring the truck to the shop, we put a system in, it gets treated just, no differently than a brick and mortar restaurant. And then, we give them all the same paperwork. They get them inspected on a semi-annual basis. So, but it's certainly in the last few years too, with just the proliferation of food trucks, we're constantly, working on those. So.
Man, that is really, that's fascinating to me. I think that's one of the coolest services I've heard of, because, it's one of those you don't think of that's so important. But for them to, as a food truck owner, to say, well, I'm just dropping it off at the shop. They're going to put this in for me. We'll pay the bill, whatever. That's really convenient too.
I think, honestly, for me, my favorite part about the food trucks is, I always say it's democratizing in a way, as far as to open a brick and mortar restaurant may take hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. It's so fascinating. Somebody will come in with an old bread truck, an old UPS truck, that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into making it roadworthy, to making it meet code. And to see them come in kind of, let's say, limping in that very first time, and then 6 months later, a year later, hey, my food truck's just gone crazy. I'm opening up a brick and mortar restaurant. I'm opening up another location. That is what we love to see, and we love to support them, along the way. So it's just really cool to see people just put that amount of effort into it and then seeing like the success of their labor.
This is really fast. I am so glad I made the phone call. See, every once in a while I can produce a good show, And now, with that being said, take us through some of the other services that you guys provide to your clients.
So we consider ourselves to be a basic life safety company. So we try very hard to do the things that we do well, and I would say do them at a high volume at a reasonable price. That's really kind of our pitch is we can do your portable fire extinguishers. We can do your pre-engineered fire suppression systems, which are going to be predominantly kitchen fire suppression systems in a commercial kitchen at a restaurant, industrial fire suppression systems for paint booths primarily, and some industrial applications. Emergency and exit lighting, doing the annual servicing on those. We also do a small amount of first aid as well. So those are really the channels that we try to stay in. Our technicians are fantastic at doing that. I think I know it doesn't sound very exciting, but the paperwork we produce, I think, is second to none in the industry.
Well, it's crucial. To me, it's not exciting, but it's probably one of the most crucial things that you guys have to do is the paperwork aspect and the accounting and record keeping of what you're doing too, right?
For sure. And I think when the fire marshals see our reports, they know that we're not just going through the motions. We're documenting it. Yeah. We're taking photographs of things as we go to document this was put back in the correct place. The appliances are in the correct position. So we really take a lot of pride in that. Once again, it's not very sexy, but it's a really critical part of like doing a good job for our customers and for them getting value. Customers can hire us for the same price as another customer, but they're going to get a lot more as far as a deliverable goes, and we're proud of that.
Well, and that's the thing I was going to ask you, because I'm sure there's companies out there that, they'll put the equipment in and, all right, see you later, and just keep moving like a conveyor belt. But to have a company like yours that really cares and is being diligent and doing their due diligence and going, hey, let's keep everything up to date. Here's your records. Here's everything that they need. You see it by the, I'm sure by the breakdown of it by the day or whatever it is for the timeline. I mean, I'd much rather have that company than somebody that's, all right, you're good, see you later,
For sure, and we're local. I feel like we're, kind of tooting our horn here, but like I feel like we're a good size. We're a local business, but we're not, we're big enough that we have resources. If somebody calls us and they have an emergency, they need something, we have the personnel to respond. But we're not some big corporate, company. Our pricing is like I said, very affordable. It's a fraction of what you would be charged by some big national competitor. So I think we're in a really good position, and we're just responsive, I think, is really what it boils down to. We have a good team of people in the office, and if somebody calls and they have a need, they have something urgent, we'll get somebody out there right away.
Well, and too, I'm telling you what, I mean, I don't know anyone that likes to hear, thank you for calling, Acme Fire Solutions. Press 3 to,
Sure.
I mean, it's great to have that connection that you guys have.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And now with that, what are some of the, whenever you're looking through and you're going through a client's checklist, what are some of the things that you do in your initial visit with that, first-time client?
So on the fire extinguisher side, it's just making sure that they have an adequate number of fire extinguishers in this space. So there's certain requirements based on the type of occupancy, types of fire extinguishers they need to have, the distance those fire extinguishers need to be, so they're accessible in case of a fire. So on the fire extinguisher side, our technicians are going to do a walk through the facility. Hey, Mr. Customer, we noticed there's a mechanical room in the basement. You got some hazards there, maybe some combustible liquids, things like that. We would recommend this type of fire extinguisher. I see you have the server room, or you have this radio studio, and the last thing you want to do is if you had a fire, use an ABC fire extinguisher and contaminate and damage, tens of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. So there's specialized extinguishers that we would recommend in those types of applications. Wow. So that's kind of on the fire extinguisher side. And then on the kitchen fire suppression side, it's really just going through and making sure, okay, Mr. Customer, you have XYZ manufacturer of fire suppression system. I noticed you have these appliances, and making sure that the correct nozzles are in the right position, so in the event they had a fire, they're properly protected. That is
I'm really fascinated by this. I think what you guys do is so cool, because it really is one of those things that you don't need to know it until you need to know it. And Have you ever had a conversation with a client that, unfortunately maybe had a fire or something, serious happen, and, they go, hey, really want to thank you for this. Has that happened yet where they give you a call and just go, hey, this worked, you saved us?
For sure. Absolutely. And a lot of times those conversations, we, once again, I kind of keep going back to the technicians, but we feel incredibly blessed as owners to have such good technicians that work for us. And it amazes me the number of times we get those kind of phone calls, unsolicited jobs I didn't even necessarily know. I don't know about every single emergency call that goes out, or every time my technicians are out at a job site. So it's amazing that the people that take the time to pick up the phone, to call the office and say, technician so-and-so came out. They really spent time to educate me. I didn't know that I had this issue. They explained it to me. And they took great care of me, and so we try to, when our technicians come in for meetings, we try to point those things out. But it amazes me because I guess maybe I'm not that kind of person, and shame on me. I'm normally, when you have a really pleasant service experience, I'm normally like, well, that was a great experience, but I don't necessarily take the time to pick up the phone and call. So to think that they did such a good job that somebody's actually going to pick up the phone and call the office and just say, hey, whoever's listening, I just want you to know that, so-and-so did a great job for me. So those are things that really we take a lot of pride in, and we feel like it's anecdotal, but I think for us, that's a sign that we're successful as a small business.
I'm telling you what, and I'm really fascinated by this, and I think you guys do a great job and a great service, and so many people, just because I always do a little bit of background and see what companies are doing, and I think every one of them were nothing but positive, and how great the technicians were, which in this day and age, to find somebody that's respectful, always showing up for work, gets a little difficult.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pyrotech's got you covered. Hey, is there anything else that you'd like to get out that we haven't hit on yet?
No, just appreciate the time, appreciate you having us on, and like I said, we're just a proud local business and appreciate the community supporting us.
Well, I'm sorry, I had a little bit of I have like an ingrown hair there. It was like bothering me. It was running on the mat, and I kept feeling it. But this is seriously, Tim, one of the most insightful conversations, because those are the things that fascinate me, or the companies like your guys is that protect us each and every day and are there when we need it without us even realizing it's there sometimes. And if there's a commercial business around here and someone just bought a property and they need their fire suppression system, and maybe they haven't, Pyrotech's not in the doors yet, how do they reach out? How do they start that process?
So really, whatever, we'll meet the customer wherever. So probably best place to start, if you go to our website, you can, people can email, they can text our office, they can call the office. The best number, the main number is 314-839-8880. But email, text, calls, we know that people communicate in different ways, and we try to meet them halfway. So however people want to reach out to us, we'll be right there.
Absolutely. And if you want to just go to the website, I'll give it to you. Pyrotech, that's Pyrotech-Inc.com. Start your journey today if you haven't already. Tim, really appreciate your time, man. Thank you for taking the trek over the war zone that's 270. And God love you for that, man. To come back anytime if you have any new equipment, anything that's developing you want to talk about, man, you're more than welcome.
Great. Thank you. I really appreciate the time. Thank you.
No problem. 10:52 on this 31st day of May. It is a Wednesday already. Damn. In downtown Alton. Coming up, wrapping up this Wednesday, and looking over ahead to tomorrow after this.